Hello and welcome to another episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. So today is Wednesday, the 22nd of May, and we've got Ross, we've got Stephen today. Guys, I'm sure everybody had a great weekend. I know that we did the wee podcast on Monday night and we spoke about all the celebrations, but the celebrations I'm sure are still continuing. I'll start with yourself, Ross. How are you, mate? And did you enjoy the weekend?
I'm not bad, mate. As I was saying just off air, I've not been feeling great for the best part of a week. So, as much as I did enjoy the celebrations, I probably didn't celebrate just as much as I ordinarily would have. But I mean, it was a long, hard season, and obviously we've got the cup final coming up, which we'll talk about. But a long, hard season, and we got over the line. Brendan got us there.
We sure did. And for the actual game itself, where were you? Were you watching it somewhere?
I just watched it in the house, just myself. I had the telly swiveled round so I could sit and catch the sun on the decking and watch the telly, which was in the living room. But I mean, I still enjoyed it, but I would have liked to have been out and about, but I just laid low and stayed in the house.
It does remind me, actually. I remember seeing the photos of your barbecue, asparagus and halloumi, amongst other things.
Yeah,
I'm sure like lamb koftas, stuff like that. Uh, it looked pretty good, man. It looked pretty good.
it was
Stephen,
decent.
it looked fucking tasty, mate. Stephen, how are you? I'm sure you had a brilliant weekend as well.
Ah, man, I did have a brilliant weekend. But I'm going to sound a bit like Ross here, but I spent the weekend with my family, watched the game with my granda and my granny and my brother, as we always do, and just enjoyed kind of low key celebrations. I didn't really get on the drink that much, but again, as Ross said, we have a cup final to look forward to. Celtic 8 is already gearing up for an argument between me and Ross later on tonight in the podcast. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think for me. I hate that kind of question that the media asks players. Do you ever get tired of winning? No, you don't get tired of winning. Us supporters don't get tired of it. We love these days. We live for them days and watching the post match celebrations, the interviews on the pitch and all that. It's brilliant to watch. And again, the likes of Joe Hart, Brendan Rodgers, and addressing the crowd along with the captain Cal McGregor. Trophy day, we're used to it 12 out of the last 13 years. It's incredible. So I mean the success can't be underestimated, and like what Ross said there at the start, Rogers has come back and led us through that kind of journey, and the league is again back home at the paradise where it belongs.
Well said, really well said. I totally echo those sentiments. It's funny what you're saying about people asking Celtic fans, Celtic players, do you ever get tired of winning? And I think it's an interesting question, but unless you're an actual winner, then you might not realise just how addictive it is. I would say that no title win is ever boring, and I think despite winning 12 league titles in 13 seasons, this campaign is, for me, it's really hammered home that each season is different and it carries its own intrigue. Each season has its own journey, its own kind of subplots, and almost always drama does find a way to kind of come to the fore, to the prominence. Like this season, we've seen like the familiar heroes like Callum McGregor, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Matt O'Reilly kind of stepping up to the plate, and we've had a supporting cast of unlikely names who were crucial to this league victory, such as people like Liam Scales, who you would never have guessed would be a key ingredient in a Celtic winning team. And then we've also come up against like a new adversary in Philip Clement and stiff resistance against other teams who before in previous seasons we might have brushed aside, people like Kilmarnock and Hearts. They've really played their own part in our journey throughout this season. And as supporters, we've been through the ringer. Like we've been experiencing the full range of emotions. Like us as a podcast, as members, like we've been arguing amongst each other, debating, like friendly fire, but disagreeing with each other. But we started off with a really underwhelming beginning to the season. We were on the back foot after losing Ange and the departure of Jota. There was a total oversight from the board and how they never saw this coming and how they failed to prepare for us for the season. And it felt like we'd kind of taken a step back despite the progress of the last kind of 2 years, where we really made solid progress under Ange. Things were getting exciting, but it felt like we did take a step back. And I think despite the poor recruitment, the injuries, the adversity, I think the experience of the core of our squad and trusting in Brendan Rodgers, who has been there, seen it and done it, we've managed to navigate our way through what was a really, really dramatic season. We ended up winning the league by 8 points, but I think that we all realise there was so many turning points, so many poignant moments in this season where we can look back in this. People might look back in the history records and say, yeah, Celtic won it, but we know how difficult it was and the drama that unfolded. So I guess that does kind of hammer home how memorable this one was. And it's not boring by far. No chance could you ever describe this season as boring. Probably the we've had in these years, probably in over a decade. Ross, what emotions did you go through as a fan whenever you kind of think about the events that took place throughout this?
I think you summed it up perfectly, what you've just said. It was all the emotions. It started off, you were sort of looking forward to the season. I was feeling positive. We'd got Brendan Rodgers in. He for me was the only candidate, the best candidate. We got him in. We start off the season with a 4-2 victory at home against Ross County, and you think that's us off and running. And we were for a long while, albeit everybody will say that the football wasn't as good as it had been last season. But as the season wore on, I think we were getting into our stride. We opened up a lead, albeit Rangers had Beale at the helm, and had he stayed there, would have absolutely ran away with it. But you have peaks and troughs in the season, and we were like that after about sort of November time. It was up and down, up and down. December was a real low point. Then we came back after the January window. We got a couple of wins, then it was a couple of defeats, couple of draws, and it was just the full range of emotions. But then once we started to get our, as you called it perfectly, Gav, the core of our squad back, that's when it came to the fore, and it came into the business end of the season. And for me, I had one moment of doubt that we wouldn't win the league, and it was a brief moment after we lost the late goal at home to Kilmarnock. I thought, I don't see how we recover for this now. This is because I think the week before we had maybe dropped points. I can't remember exactly. And then we go and draw with Kilmarnock last minute. No, it wasn't that. Rangers had won the day before, I think. And then we had to go out and win to keep, obviously, neck and neck with them. And then we lost. And you're talking about like that night after the game, I couldn't get it in my head. I was like, that I don't see how we recover for this, because we weren't getting any momentum going whatsoever. But then the next day you sort of calmed down, and that belief came back again that once we get this, the core of the squad back, I think we have a good enough team to go on a run. And that transpired. Listen, that's not me saying I know. That was more hope than no. But it transpired like that, and we came through in the end. And I think for me, we talk about managers that could have came in. I think we were linked with Maresca for a long while, Kieran McKenna, who, by the way, they both done excellent jobs at their respective clubs. Do I think they guys would have had the nous and the experience and the calmness of what Brendan Rodgers showed when push came to shove in the business end of the season? Brendan Rodgers got far more experience than them. Again, you can't say for sure, but the only man that I would have wanted at the helm to take Celtic to where we needed to be when you sort of came into that maybe last 2 months of the season was Brendan Rodgers. And I think now, even if we'd lost the league, I said it all season, he was still the man to take us forward, and I absolutely think he's the man to take us forward now. But of course, we need the club, the board, Peter Law, to really get behind this man now, because he's a real deal.
Really, really well said, mate. Difficult to kind of build on that, Stephen. I guess your kind of overall summation of the season, the emotions that you went through. Was there any particular point where you had lost faith? And by the way, the way that Ross said it about Brendan Rodgers, there would have been other people that, you know, I guess the Celtic fans, you know, that there is a kind of a common theme of people saying, you know, don't go back to the tried and tested. I think we've got a reputation of going back to people who we already have worked with in the past. And Ross obviously was saying that he would have taken Brendan Rodgers over these other people at Maresca, who had a fantastic season with Leicester. So I guess yourself, your thoughts on the season, was there any times that you lost the faith?
Me and emotion, me losing faith, I never do that. To anything that goes on. Nah, I'm joking. But I do have to say in the comments that they're on fire tonight, you're getting a lot of grief, Gav, for your beard. I'm Wolverine, and they're saying you make hooch in your loft and stuff. It's you know, while this chat goes, it's mental.
That is a thought.
But I mean, for myself, look, it's actually funny Ross sprung it up. But I know he didn't see the chat before he came on, but we were talking about the managers who were linked to us before Rodgers came. We actually done a podcast, Ross. I think me and you done it, didn't we? About the candidates and things. But back last year,
I can't mind last week.
I think it was me, you, and Franny, I believe it was, and Willie was involved in it as well. We went through just a list, and Kieran McKenna was on it, and Enzo Maresca. Again, both got promotions with their respective clubs.
Who was McKenna in charge of? Sorry,
Ipswich.
Ipswich, right, okay.
Yeah, so he's led them the back-to-back promotions from League One Championship to Premier League, which is a brilliant kind of trajectory to be on, especially for a club like Ipswich, getting back up to the EPL. But you can look back at that and think, look, if we took Enzo on, his football's been praised in the Championship. He's got up with Leicester, high points total in a tough league. That's fantastic. And the same with Kieran McKenna. He's been linked now with the Chelsea job. But I think the difference is with Celtic, and I think Ross nailed it in terms of the pressure, in terms of the goldfish bowl and dealing with that. Kieran McKenna and Enzo basically are young managers. Before McKenna got the Ipswich job, he was like academy coach at Manchester United. Enzo was under Pep for a while and he failed at Parma. So I mean, so you don't know how these guys would react under the pressure environment that you see up in Glasgow. And again, I do agree, even though at the time I was probably a bit perplexed as why Rodgers got it again, but I take a wee while to think about it and kind of look at the candidates who are available, and you come to the conclusion that obviously he was the best man for the job. And in terms of losing faith for the moments of the season, of course it did. Of course it did. I think most Celtic fans probably did. Even the most positive people with the most positive outlooks probably had a bit of doubt in their minds. I mean, you look at that run at Christmas time. Obviously, we're going to come on to different games, Gav, later in the podcast about kind of pivotal moments and things of that nature. But you look at the run where we dropped points at the Christmas period. We got beat twice by Hearts. We got schooled by Kilmarnock a few times. Got knocked out of the League Cup first time of asking. So there's a couple of things in there. You're going, can this team get this over the line? Can this team cope with that? Because again, it goes back to the recruitment as well. Rodgers had a lot to deal with. So he had a lot to deal with. The players who come in didn't fill the voids that were left. He's had to turn to old heads like James Forrest to see us through games now. And I mean, you look back at the previous lineups the last 3 to 4 weeks. There's probably one summer signing featuring, and that again is testament to Rodgers getting what he can out of this squad, like squeezing every ounce of quality that he can, and he knows it's there. Obviously, working before with Calmac and you know what I mean, the likes of Ralston when he was coming through first of all, and James V. Forrest, he trusts him with his life, so to speak. But yeah, it's Rodgers, as he said, we read our own story, we come alive at this time of the season. I think it was Celtic he had put in the comments that he schooled Clementine in the last third of the season, psychologically beat him, and again that boded well for us on the pitch. And I mean, I'm an emotional person. I react all the time. There's stuff I've said in this podcast people can clip and they can show it back to me, and I'll own it. Like, and was there times it was questioning Rodgers for the job? Yeah, it was questioning. And there was a time before, like me and Jed were on the podcast, we were saying, should he leave before January? So it gives a new manager a chance to come in and bring his targets in. So that's how some fans were thinking at the time. A lot of that, again, is to do with the emotional reaction of how he left in the first place. And there's still some kind of undertone of doubt in him as a person. And can you trust him and things like that? I mean, you see now, he's been kind of remotely linked with the Chelsea job, and people are going, is he going to jump ship? Is he going to do this? But I don't believe that's going to happen. I think Ross, you put in the chat, he scratched the itch when he wanted the final crack at the EPL. I think that was you put that in earlier on, and he got that with Leicester.
Said that.
Oh, Willie.
It was Willie and Anthony.
Aye, well, I do agree with him that aspect of things, and it's again. He said we'll see him there in May, and we certainly did with the league title, and that's all that counts. We're league champions 3 times in a row now, and as I said, again, a big focus on that has to be the squad he done it with. Basically, no improvements in what we had the season before. If anything, we were probably weaker than what we had behind in his last season. And obviously, you said we lost Jada, we lost Starfelt, and different squad players like Giakoumakis and Juranovic. You can throw into that. We didn't replace them, and Rodgers was left with the skeleton of a core, and he just had to fit people around that and bring them in, and it's worked. And he's a coach. He always says first and foremost, and he likes coaching these players. And I mean, regardless if there's players who probably had dips and peaks and troughs, like Ross said, I think the whole team did at points. But we've come through the season. We've went over the finish line. We've sprinted over the finish line. We wrote our own story, and we've got the league title.
Very well put. There is one comment here that I wanted to briefly speak about from Stephen Kennedy. A bit of a coincidence linked with the Chelsea job when we have a cup final on Saturday. Yeah, Pochettino has left Chelsea, the revolving door, even though the Abramovich is gone and they've got Todd Bowley, and that revolving door is still there. It's a permanent feature of Stamford Bridge. A curious club. However, they have actually managed to be very, very successful if you judge it over a longer period of time. So the comment I wanted to look at was from Stephen John. I don't actually disagree with you whenever you say that. So to me, Rodgers will be judged on next season. We'll see how much input he has then. I do agree in the fact that, of course, he will be judged on next season, because I think there's a further emphasis that we want to push on. But where I would put more focuses on is this season. I think in the previous accomplishments that Rodgers has had at Parkhead, I felt that this was the toughest league campaign that he's had to go through, and it felt like he wasn't equipped with the greatest squad compared to previous years. So I felt that it was the toughest league campaign for Brendan Rodgers, and he is judged, and he's kind of came out on top over this season. But I do agree that, you know, whenever the league campaign starts next season, we're going to forget about this and we're going to move on. And that's what we do at Celtic. You forget what's happened.
Just to come in on that, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think you make a good point. And what Stephen John is saying, I can understand it both ways here. But something Ross said that I totally forgot about and wanted to come back on. He said that if Rodgers didn't win the league, he'd be still happy for him to be in charge in terms of next season. Now, if you look at him being knocked out of the League Cup, first time of asking by Kilmarnock, if we lost the league, and then, for example, look, we didn't win a trophy, right? We didn't win a trophy. I think in that situation, the heat would have been too much. The fan pressure would have been too much. There would have been too much scrutiny on Rodgers. There would have been too much scrutiny on the squad. And I believe he might have walked, if that makes sense. I don't know if he would have been pushed, but I think he might have walked. And if any manager comes in and finishes the season trophyless, again, that's hypothetical speaking. It obviously didn't happen, but it's just coming back on what Ross said. I wouldn't be happy with him leading us into next season. That's just my opinion. I think if you don't win a trophy in your first season, you shouldn't be at the club the season after.
So you think everything was riding on the league? If we never got the league, then he would have been done. Yeah,
pretty much what I'm saying in a nutshell. Yeah,
Ross.
Well, I was saying, had he not won the league, I would. That wasn't me saying he wouldn't win the Scottish Cup, but I just felt like he's all alluded to. He had his hands tied behind his back at times. There was injuries and all the rest of it, but slowly but surely, he started getting the players back, and he started getting this team playing the way he wanted. And listen, I believed that all along that he would do that, because I was banging on about injuries week in, week out on here, and I really believed that. Listen, I was probably going off more of what he done the first time around, as well. But for me, I always felt I wanted Rodgers to come back in and take the reins again. He was the only candidate for me, and I just stood by that the whole way through, and I always felt, even if he hadn't won the league, I felt that. And listen, it's still up in the air whether he'll be backed accordingly this summer. But if he is, which he should be, especially now that he's won the league, but if he hadn't won the league, they gave him a contract, they tied his hands behind his back with that summer window. If nothing else, they owed him another window to try and get this right, because they basically not fucked him over as such, but they certainly didn't help Brendan Rodgers do the job to the best of his ability. And for me, that's why I always felt that, given the proper tools and the proper batting, he could do the job. Regardless if he won the league, he could do the job for his next season. Now that he has won the league, with all that happened and the way he steadied the ship and like navigated us through this season, I believe more than ever that he is the man to take us forward. And I just think I really do think Brendan Rodgers is an elite level manager. I think he went down to Leicester after us. He won an FA Cup. He got 2 fifth place finishes. And I know that Leicester had won that league, but that was an anomaly. An unbelievable achievement, but an anomaly nonetheless. But he should have actually had 3 fifth place finishes, and he could have actually had top 4 twice in that period, but he lost it in the last day. That's how close he was. So I think people were more judging him on that last season, where again, listen, Brendan Rodgers in that last season with Leicester wasn't blameless. He played his part. The team got relegated, but again, he wanted to push on to the next level after another 5th place finish, and he wasn't given the tools to go and do that. Obviously, the Leicester, they started to not spend as much money. They'd lost their obviously previous owner, and the son took over the reins, so to speak. So there was things that went against Rodgers, but for me, his CV speaks for itself, and I think it was more his CV and what he'd done for Celtic in the past that was giving me the belief that he's the man to take us forward into next season, regardless if we win the league or not. And it was nothing really to do with what I was watching on the field of play at Celtic in this current season, because, as I've said, I felt like his hands were tied behind his back. But listen, that's hypothetical. He did win the league. We're all happy. We've got the chance of a double. Brendan Rodgers is the man for Celtic. He's outstanding.
See as well, and again, this is really smart by Brendan Rodgers. And many times we're on this podcast talking about how the media portray Celtic and portray the headlines, and the fact that he made a point of saying in his post-match after the St Mirren game, the final game of the league season, he said he got the players in the dressing room, and from August time, 26th of August, he showed them every negative headline that was printed or in the papers or said by pundits or ex-players and things of that nature. And we talked about that all the time, but why is it not being addressed? Why is this not being called out? But he waits to them moments, to them critical moments where it's like, this is why you play for this club. Look what people are saying on the outside. Prove them wrong. And I know it's all cheesy, cliche, lying stuff, but see that write your own story, that's a cracking line, because effectively that's what Celtic's done throughout the whole season. They've blocked out the noise, and when Rodgers wanted to show the players, there you go, on league day, on the trophy day, when we're lifting the league title, he shows them what the media are saying, and he's like, look at us now, lads, 8 points clear. Unbelievable.
Yeah, some good man management. And finally, just to go back to Stephen John, whenever he said regarding judging Brendan Rodgers on next season, I totally agree with you. I really, really do. And I think there's a massive emphasis on next season, because if you think about it, Celtic in the COVID year, they took a step backwards. And then we kind of went forward again with Ange with those 2 years. But I felt this season, again, we have, to an extent, somewhat taken a step backwards. We need to work in unison with the manager and with the board. And when everybody's in harmony, now that might be wishful thinking, but if everybody's working and pulling in the same direction, then I think the potential, the untapped potential that we've got right now and what we can perhaps achieve next season will be exciting. And that's why a lot of judgment will be on Brendan Rodgers if he's given those tools. So I do agree with you. Now, for part of tonight's podcast, I've asked you guys to think of a pivotal moment in the season, whether good or bad. So we'll get to that later on. But there are if I can, like in this tonight's podcast, can I break down some of the chapters of this season? And I wanted to start off with how we've acquitted ourselves in the Glasgow derbies. Now, I know that this weekend we've got another one coming up, and that will be, we'll look back to this season and that result will depend on how we look back to this season as a whole. But I think in the 4 Glasgow derbies this season, we have been fantastic. And obviously it's us dropping points against the lesser teams. But one big match was when we beat Rangers at Ibrox 1-0. That was the Kyogo game. And well, you might even want to call it the Scales and Lager Bielka game. That was a great performance. Obviously, we won again at home, and then the one very, very recent in our memories is the 3-each game at Ibrox when we're 3-1 up, or 2-1 up, sorry, 2-0 up, and the game ends up 3-each. And of course, the most recent one where it's post-split and we beat them, and that was a fantastic atmosphere. Ross, for the Glasgow derbies, how well do you think Celtic played in those games? I know that a lot of those games were only kind of 1-goal margins, but another significant thing was how important do you think it was whenever Brendan Rodgers had that hearing with the SFA and we brought in that lawyer to defend him? Because Brendan Rodgers, worst case scenario, he was going to face a two game ban, but we managed to mitigate it down to 1, and he managed to come in for the Ibrox game at 3-each. How do you think that event played an important role in the phase of the season?
Well, listen, you'd rather have your manager on the sidelines in a game of that magnitude. So it was certainly helpful. It wasn't the be-all and end-all of the result. I think it wasn't the be-all and end-all of the result. But I think that Brendan Rodgers would have had his tactics and his instructions laid out had he been not on the bench. I think the players would have been well aware of what their jobs were and what they had to do. So it certainly plays a part in game. Helps him being there and giving out instructions. But I still think Celtic could have went and done the job at Ibrox had he been in the stand. But in terms of like the games, like the 4 games, so is it 4 games? 4 games so far. I think Celtic have been exceptional in all of them for different reasons. You look at the first Ibrox game, the 1-0 game, and we're completely makeshift. As you said, Gavin, we had Lager, Bielka and Scales at the back. And I think Brendan Rodgers knew going into that game that Rangers, they kind of had the momentum. They were the favourites. So I don't know if they had the momentum, but they were certainly the favourites due to the injuries we had. And I think compared to all the other games, we played a very different game that day, in that it was possession based and we slowed it down and we really tried to frustrate their fans and not let them get behind them. And we done it brilliantly. And then it obviously helped matters when Kyogo gets that wonder goal, you have to say, out of nothing. Matt O'Reilly, obviously headers Goldson's clearance back into the path of Kyogo, and he's ruthless. But that game for me, it didn't set the tone for the season, but it gave us the belief that even with a disjointed team, we could still go out and beat Rangers. And it set the tone for the rest of the Glasgow. Oh my God, I can't talk tonight.
Have we swapped? Have we body
the
swapped?
rest, I know. I don't know what it is, man. It set the tone for the rest of the Glasgow derbies. Maybe not the rest of the season, but certainly the games. And then, obviously, the other games, I think we played a very different game for the first one, where we were more controlling and more attacking, and really took the game away for Rangers quite early on. But story of season, let them back in for various different reasons. And I don't know, you might be going to it later on, but all of that is why for me, going into the last one and going into this one, I'm supremely confident that we will beat them. And I think if we just like don't let them back in, get the lead, and just keep going, and we will destroy them. I think we could take 3 or 4 goals off them quite easily if we just go and do it and be ruthless instead of allowing them back in with silly mistakes. But I think overall, over the piece of the 4 games so far against them, I think there has been. Sinis can argue. I've never played the game like Sinis, but there's absolutely been a gap. Celtic have been up and down this season, but when the teams have come and met together, Celtic have been the better team. They've got the better players. They play the best football. There is a gap there, and I don't care what anybody says.
By the way, see, Graham Souness, he's an absolute tramp of a football pundit. See, whenever you put up a good argument to kind of just to overcome whatever logic he's got, the only defence he's got at that point is to say, well, if you're a proper football man, then you know these things. So I guess something that Ross was alluding to there was Graham Souness saying that Celtic are not miles ahead of Rangers. Stephen, the 4 games so far this season, we have taken 10 points from a possible 12. Rangers only managed 1 point. Now, we managed to win games when the chips were down, when the pressure was on, when we were written off. We did it at the start of the season, we did it in the middle, we did it in the end, we did it when it mattered. And whether you want to put it down to a better manager, the sheer psychological edge of people who've been there and done it. Maida being absolutely brilliant. You know how good he was in the last Glasgow derby, terrifying Tavernier, playing like a man out of his skin. There was, I guess, so many factors which kind of are the reasons why we seem to kind of come up trumps in these big moments. It's also very, very pleasing if you're going to win a league, then you need to beat your closest rivals, and that's the biggest failing of Rangers. Have not managed to do it, and that's why we are champions.
Well, mate, you spoke about the gap there. Look, I don't like to tempt fate, and I don't like to say stuff that could potentially come back to bite me in the arse, especially when it comes to derby games. But this is probably the most comfortable I felt playing them since Rodgers was here the first time. Do you know what I mean? And look, we alluded to at the start, our squad in terms of overall quality, first 11, decent, but anything out with that, it's not that great. And the fact that we went the Ibrox of Larga Bielka, and it was Scales at the back, and then the one, but just after Christmas, I believe it was Welsh and Scales at the back. So there's 2 games where you're playing basically a non-fancied centre-half pair, albeit Scales was first choice for the majority of the season, but I hope you get what I mean there. I feel like when we play them, and I don't know if it's Brendan himself, his record overall in these games is fantastic. I think he's lost 1, I believe it is, and it was just basically a throwaway game against him. Not saying that it's a dead rubber, but I think it was near the end of the season or whatever, and we're already miles ahead in the league. In terms of the point total, am I right in saying that the 8 points we finished clear was it higher than Ange's second season? Was it 4 points we finished ahead of Rangers last season?
I think that could be right, because we lost a game to Rangers at Parkhead in Ange's second season, didn't we? We kind of let it slip a little bit towards the end after it had been mathematically won for us. Yeah, you could be right.
So look, and I think the points, the overall 93 points as well, is up there in the top 5 of point totals in the last 20 years. So again, it's a great job. The derby games, as Ross said, set the tone, psychological, and get into these games, you have to win them, you have to get good results. And the fact that we got 10 points from 12 speaks volumes. And I was looking back at some old lineups, because one of my pivotal games we're going to come on to is a derby game. But like we were starting at like Paolo Bernardo, we were starting Leo Abada in one of the games. He was in and out all season, obviously due to difficulties and personal reasons, and he eventually left the club. And as I said, the back 2 were basically makeshift, and we still managed to go to a tough venue at Shipebrocks and win Parkhead and win. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible, and it's the character of the players. Now, you look at Rodgers in this scenario. What's he saying to the players to make them bridge that kind of level. And whatever we fought into the games of injuries and stuff, they were getting with a full clean bill of health. All their hitters were out in the pitch, and we still managed to turn them over quite easily. And again, we spoke about this leading up to the last derby game. It feels so weird being so calm and composed going into these derby fixtures. Usually I'm a bag of nerves, and usually I'm like, "Fuck, what's going to happen?" and blah blah blah. But it's a strange sense that I have even got into this one this week in the cup final. I'm calm about it. I'm really like relaxed about it, and I think Rodgers have the team well drilled and well organised, and the patterns of play that he wants to go for. I think that's already set in motion. And you cast your mind back to the Kyogo. What was that? The bit of commentary that your man said it's Kyogo Day or something. The derby is Kyogo Day. Just them types of things stick in your mind. Them types of iconic commentary, like the one with Henrik Larsson. This is sensational. And again, like you said, Gav, it was the smaller teams that we struggled against to see over the line. It felt like every big moment in the domestic football anyway, we stood up, we were counted against Rangers and things like that. We took them to school, we won the games and had that amazing point total over them. And basically, someone put in the comments, one goal away from a whitewash, one world-class goal from Matondo at the Dan embers of a game, and we would have whitewashed them in the season, which is fantastic to even think that. And I'll go back to it again. Rodgers squeezed every bit that he could out of that squad. We made no improvements from the season before. We were weaker, and we still managed to pull off some incredible results, and it's eventually led us to the league title, and that can't be underestimated. Now, there's a lot of to and fro in the comments about what Ross said about is Rodgers an elite level manager. Some say yes, some say no. I think he's just below that bracket. I think in terms of European-based managers, he's up there. I think Red Scotland put that in. I do agree with him in that aspect of things, but his record cannot be doubted in these games. He must have some mental hold over them. I mean, we'd probably play the under-9 team and still come away with a victory. That's how this man is getting into these games. He comes alive, and the team perform, and 9 times out of 10 at this present moment, we're getting the results against them. And Ross is knackered, as I can tell, but it's unbelievable. No, it's unbelievable time to be a Celtic fan. And like you said, Gav, you can look back at this season with many different emotions, but I think one of the most kind of overwhelming feelings that I have is this is probably the most meaningful title to Rodgers, and in terms of the first time and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the Invincible Treble edges it, but the pitfalls, the recruitment issues, the injury issues, the personnel, Ross's favourite word, all that combined, and going to these places and still coming away with results makes champions. And that's what the crack is. And Jerry Coyle, Ross is bored. I'll shut up now.
I'm no bored, honestly.
Well, to bring it back from the kind of pessimistic tone of Stephen, and to talk about the kind of lowest moment perhaps of the season, I wanted to get your thoughts whenever, after the realisation that we had blown a lead, and that mathematically, if Rangers to win all their games, then they would be champions. They had a game in hand as well, and things were looking bleak at that point. We hadn't really seen a chink in the armour of Rangers under the stewardship of Philippe Clement. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the horror of seeing Rangers come so close to the title after a number of years where they've not threatened to do so. For me, it was very, very uncomfortable, and it's probably made the success all the more sweeter. How were you in those moments of despair whenever you thought it might not be our year?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, like I said earlier on, after that Kilmarnock game, where we lost a late goal, that was my lowest point, where I thought, I don't see how we turn this around, and it was a difficult one to take at that time. I actually hadn't even seen the Kilmarnock game. I'd been in Glasgow with Sharon, and I was getting notifications on my phone, and then that goal goes. I think, all right, we're getting over the line here. We're getting away with it. I've not seen the performance, but you guys were in the chat saying it was really poor. It was poor. I think it was a poor second half, if I remember right. And then they lose that goal, and you think at that moment, I was like, does this team have the stomach for it? Because in seasons past, they would have seen that out, and they got the result, got the 3 points. But there was games dotted all over the season, where it was games like that where they were losing late goals, and I think they'd lost a late goal at home to Motherwell as well, for being in 1-0 up. And I just, there was the moments I was like, do we have the stomach for this? Because, as I've said, champions see their games out and they get the 3 points, and then that's at the end of the game, you go, that's why we're champions. But we were dropping these points, and I was like, there was that seeded out, but also, as I've said, still belief that the manager we had could get this right with this team. But then you looked across the city, and Rangers were building up a heady steam. They weren't playing unbelievable football, but they were getting results, and they were showing a form, a league winning form, title winning form. You have to say, you cannot take it away from them. But I mean, even when they got their noses in front, albeit they had their noses in front, it was still in our hands because we still had to play them. I think at that point we still had to play them another twice, and for me, that's what still gave me belief, the belief that we would go on and win the league, because I just felt that we were too good for them when we came up against each other, and that it proved to be the case. Albeit we drew at Ibrox, but that proved to be the case. And you have to say, even with that, I think it was going to still be really tight had they not dropped the points at Ross County, and then obviously Dundee. They never recovered for that Ross County debacle and played Dundee really quickly after it, and they showed their true mentality then, that they couldn't recover quickly off the back of dropping the 3 points at Ross County. Whereas Celtic then started showing the title winning form, as we all know. But there wasn't many moments of major doubt for me, but certainly the Kilmarnock game, when we drew one each, that was my lowest point in the season, I would say, and where I had the biggest doubts. I have to say, the game at Easter Road, albeit that we won the game with the late goal for Ida, I felt the way we performed in that game. I said at the time that I can accept Celtic dropping points if they're not in control of the game, but they're still playing in a controlled manner. You can lose a game, you can draw a game, it happens. But it was the manner in which we were playing at that point, where we were all at sea, certainly Easter Road. We were at 6s and 7s. There didn't look a plan. There didn't look a plan B. The defence was all over the place. And again, I go back to the fact that there was injuries, but you can have injuries at Celtic and still be playing a controlled manner. They weren't. They were all over the place. And that game for me was a real low point. But it wasn't a point where I doubted we could win the league, because we eventually won that game. But there was that period there. I can't mind who else we played in and around that. I think we maybe even dropped points at Pataudry. And again, it wasn't a controlled performance. And that, for me, I can accept draws and I can accept defeats because it happens. It's part of football. But I will not accept as a Celtic supporter playing in the manner that we were playing at that period. But we came through it, and again, I don't want to labour too much on the negatives, but they were low points for me in the season. But Kilmarnock at home was probably the lowest.
Well played. Stephen, a wee question to yourself before we move on to break up the podcast with a wee quiz. It's not going to be are you trying to do a Rocky thing or dancing?
I'm ready for you, Gav. I'm ready for the question. I'm going to boom, boom, boom. Let's go.
Yeah, so as Ross was talking about, there was a kind of a disbelief at our performances mid-season, dropping points against kind of the lesser teams. I think that we can agree that there's been a resurgence in Kilmarnock under Dent McInnes. After a couple of years ago, they were languishing in the league below. Even St Mirren under Stephen Robinson, they're a kind of a tough nut to crack. And Hearts have been tough competitors this season as well. Do you think it kind of enhances the experience as a Celtic fan whenever you win the league and you have to navigate past this kind of competition? But I think back to even the 80s where you had a strong Dundee United and you had a strong Aberdeen. I also think that the Scottish league needs a strong Hearts and a strong Hibs as well. We've not really had that from Hibs, but I think that it enhances the game, the league, if those teams are doing better than what they have fared in recent years. So basically, to yourself, do you think it enhances it? And I guess that kind of phrase, I think you used this phrase once, a good advert for Scottish football. Do you think, all in all, as a product, it's good if these teams are actually doing well? Like Hibs, for example, they're sacking managers left, right, and centre. But there are other teams that have got more stability. Do you think it's good for the product, the game, and as us, as a Celtic fan, to win the league despite playing against tough competition?
I don't know. I mean, yes, in a way it's good, right? And again, having competitive matches for the TV and stuff is even better. But when you have people like Neil Doncaster controlling their TV deals, and you're fucked either way. You're getting 2p and a pack of crisp for your TV deals, you know what I mean? So regardless if you're getting competition in Scotland, you're not going to get rewarded with it financially. And people on this podcast who've watched for a long time, I'm a big advocate of Scottish clubs improving themselves. I'm a big advocate of Scottish clubs thinking outside of the box. I think Hibs and getting the investment from Bournemouth, I can't remember his name, the American owner, £6 million injected into the club, and that they're partners now, which is a good thing, can open up an avenue for them. Look at St Mirren, Stephen Robinson, like you said, he's done a fantastic job, both with St Mirren and Motherwell when he was managing them, both respectively. And then you look at Hearts, again, yeah, they're competitive with us, but they kind of go into bed and sleep under the pillows when Rangers come to town. So there's different ways you can look at that. Do you know what I mean? And as I said, I'll reiterate, I love when Scottish clubs think outside the box. I'm actually excited to see how, well, not excited, it's a strong word, but it's just different. But seeing how the new guy coming into Aberdeen does, Jimmy Thielen from Elfsborg, he managed them over in Sweden. And funny enough, Gustav, that's where we get Gustav Lagerbielke from. So he might end up on loan to Aberdeen, kind of a long shot to say now, but you kind of watch the space of these ones. But yeah, it makes it more interesting. It makes it more, what was I say, nail biting for the drama and things of that nature. Yes, we're pulling off the big results against Sevco and teams of that nature, but we're kind of going through the motions a wee bit against the smaller teams. And still, we came away with the 8-point gap. And like one of the lowest moments of this season for me, Ross, you remember it? We watched the Celtic and Hearts game at home before we went to the Kerrydale, and we got beat 2-0. And you talk about plans and you talk about playing with control. That was one of them days where everything could have went wrong, had to go wrong, and it was so bad to watch. So I think our moods went from to hitting the floor in the space of 90 minutes. And I know that's a football game, but it was one of the lowest moments of this season for me. But I do agree with the aspect that you're saying. Like, it makes it exciting for the neutral, that I would say, doesn't it? So yeah, in a way, getting through all these challenges and coming through at the other end of the league title, we'll take it. I have took it. So,
and you'll take some more. And we'll move on to the quiz now. By the way, can I just say, whenever you are preparing for a football quiz and you go into Google, that's your default thing, go into Google and you type in like football quiz with answers. Like, see the amount of trash that comes up, especially if you do a Celtic quiz, questions with answers. Like, the first link you click on, it will be like, when did Celtic win the European Cup? And you're like, Jesus Christ. And then you move on to the next link, and it's like, who's got the most appearances for Celtic? And then at that point, you're like, right, okay, I'll just fucking do it on my own. And then you kind of veer off. So what I've done is I started off with one kind of Celtic question, and I just veered off topic, stayed with football in general. But so question one, if you're ready, I don't know, should we do pen and paper and go back to it? What's the kind of your favourite format for a quiz apart from
shout out? I have no pen and paper, so it has to be shout out.
I prefer pen and paper, but whatever. we'll go with shout out. I'm cool with that.
Comments off, Ross?
They're off, aye.
Okay. Question one. Which team did Celtic sign Tommy Johnson from?
Aston Villa.
The man who doesn't like shouting has got a point. Right, okay. Question 2. Who scored the fastest hat-trick in EPL history?
Andy Cole.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
No, it was Sadio Mane. Yeah, there we go.
Well, aye,
Um,
that's right. I did know
He's
that.
shite anyway.
aye, he's shite now. Question 2. Which club did Juventus sign Zidane from in 1996?
Hamburg.
Hamburg, did you say?
Aye, that's not Hamburg. Like, but yeah.
So,
I'm gonna say Marseille.
I'll say close. It's Bordeaux. Okay, question 4. Which country was the runner-up in the 2014 World Cup?
Germany.
What was it? Which country?
What the fuck was that look for?
Which country? That look was for you, Stephen. That was reserved entirely for you. Which country was runner-up in the 2014 World Cup?
Which country was runner-up in the 2014 World Cup?
Oh, fuck.
Was it? No, that was.
Can I come in again?
Is it the Netherlands?
No, it was Argentina. Argentina. Stephen, what answer were you going to give this time round?
Argentina.
Right, Ross, what is it you're drinking? Are you on the booze? Or are you on...
It's just the blackcurrant diluting.
Okay. Right, question 5. Who were the 3 Dutchmen who played for AC Milan in the early 90s?
Hullet, Van Basten, and Hullet, Van
Seedorf?
Basten. Oh, fuck's sake. Have I got 2 right?
Yeah, you've got 2 right. Yeah.
Aye.
I got the 3 right though.
Try to rack my brains here. I'm going to try to go through the 1 to 11 kind of here. I don't think I'm going to get the 3rd. I'm just going to. I know it's not right, but I'm going to. I know he didn't play with him, but I'm going to say Danny Blunt.
Yeah, okay, so that's 3 points in total for you. Okay, you got to.
Sorry, hold on. That's not how that works. He got in a question of 3. You're meant to get all 3 to get the point. There should be 0 points out of it. But okay.
It was Frank Rijkaard.
Oh man! Oh, can't you believe I didn't get that? That's a shocker.
Yeah, and for Red Scotland here, a very, very obscene moment in football. Rijkaard grog on Rudy Voller, pure belter. It was minging. I think both of them get sent off, and that I think Voller retaliated, but it was the most disgusting thing that's happened in a football.
Especially into a tight pair.
I know, mate. I know how you're going to get that out, huh? Difficult. Right. Okay. Question 6. Name the Italian teams that Batistuta has played for.
Fuck me. Like, honestly. Oh, my God.
1 point for each.
And I add that stipulation in? That's incredible.
I've got 2 at the minute. Do I need to... Can I say 2 of them now?
You can go ahead.
Fiorentina and Roma.
Yeah.
And
How many is there?
Just one more.
I don't know the other one. I'm going to just
Parma.
say. I'm going to say Sampdoria.
Okay, right. So you got 2 right. You got 2 right. So that's 5 points in total for yourself. Stephen, whenever you feel like it, you can start the quiz.
Well, do you know, if you ask questions that aren't in the fucking 1980s, I'll do all right. Like,
I was
no,
actually, I know that you're prone to asking like pure ridiculous, bizarre, out there questions. I was going to ask which Scottish town was Fergus McCann born in. That's not a question, but I was going to ask it anyway.
Croy.
Stirling.
Oh, was it?
Stirling, apparently. Okay, question 7.
What
How
was
many
the
teams?
third? Sorry, Gavin. What was the third Italian team?
Oh,
that
Inter
passed out?
Milan.
I can't
Just
picture him in that top.
Yeah, I think it's
Not
just on
not
the
saying I don't believe you, like.
Right, question 7. How many times did Raul win the Champions League?
3.
Yeah, there we go. A point on the board for Stephen.
Well done, son.
Relief. Right. Now, for the next 2 questions,
Oh, for fuck's sake. I know
multiple
what's coming.
answers. Now, we
Yep.
could do it in this kind of scenario where you can say, I will say X amount, and then that means that you need to say X amount. You know that. Would you like to do that, Stephen? That's a possible way for you to earn back some valuable points.
Gav, do you know what? Go for it. You've obviously tailored this quiz to Ross, so we'll finish it off for Ross this way. So, you know, it's all good. It's all good.
What's the score? 5-1?
Yeah. Take a break. Go out and have this whatever drink, and I'll still be on one. Don't worry.
Right. Okay. Question 8. How many Ballon d'Or winners can you name from the 2000s? It's that one decade. Now,
obviously, there's players that have won multiple, so you're only getting one for them, I take it.
Au contraire, there are 10 winners in that decade. That's why I thought it was a good question.
From the 10... so from 2000 to 2010?
From 2000 to 2009.
Sorry, right, okay. There's 10.
10 possible answers. So, who's gallus enough to go for the highest number?
Right.
Oh, shit.
Stephen, come on, this is not the 80s. Come on.
Mate, my mind's gone blank. I'll go 4 at the minute, and I'll see what Ross says.
4.
Talk about hedging your bets. Right, Ross. The man's trying to play you.
I'm going to tell Stephen to name them.
Right, you're going to put him on the spot for 4. Yeah?
Yeah, I don't think he can do
Well, hold on. He doesn't get any points if I get them wrong, like, so.
He does. He does.
So he gets... That's incredible, by the way. Jesus.
You shouldn't have went high.
Winner take... No, you can change. You can change. Well, you can't go down. I would say you can't go down. You can either go 4
So,
or...
you can change, but actually, no, you can't go down. But that's fine. That's okay. Right. Kaka, is he one of them?
Yes.
I think I've got 1.
Oh, shit. Wouldn't that be too early for?
Stephen, take your time, okay? Take your time.
I'll take my time. Don't worry.
Answers.
I know. That doesn't make it easier. Right, so Kaka, there's 1. There's 1 point to me. That's 5-2. Happy days.
If you get the 4 of them, you get that point.
Correct.
I hate this one. Number 2. Who the fuck? See, I don't want to say. Oh my god. Lionel Messi.
Yep.
Fuck. I'm trying to think different leagues. I'm trying to think. This is mental. Ross, have you jogged your memory? Do you know any?
I maybe know two more.
Ronaldinho.
Well done. Okay. You just need one more. And then you've leveled it on points. And you'll be kicking yourself if you never went for more.
Right. Oh my fuck.
Ronaldinho, Kaká, and Messi. Who else won the Ballon d'Or in that decade?
Something's telling me it's too early for Cristiano. Anyone want to say yes or no?
Is Bayer Leverkusen playing Atalanta tonight? Or is that a different game?
I think it is.
Is their winning run going to come to an end?
Are they losing 3-0?
Oh my mother and God, by the way.
That's why people talk about
Thierry Henry.
Mate, you could have went for Figo, you could have went for Owen, you could have went for Brazilian Ronaldo, you could have went for Portuguese Ronaldo, you could have went for Nedved, Shevchenko, Fabio Cannavaro. Thierry Henry never won it.
I had Owen in my list. That was it.
Right, I'm going to be kind. I'm not going to award Ross any points. I think just the humiliation is enough, Stephen.
I hate doing quizzes, this dickhead. He fucking annoys me.
So, what is it? Still 5-1, or is he getting a couple of points?
5-1 to you, Ross, and you've also got a moral victory from that last time.
By the way, for Thierry Henry not to win the Ballon d'Or, that's a disgrace.
I'm going to just do a lappy honour of the room since I got a moral victory, right?
Right, so the last question was another kind of multiple choice one. So when Scotland played Brazil in the World Cup opener in 1998, there were a number of former Celtic players who were in the squad. I'm not going to be tough and say, can you name who actually had minutes in that game? But there are a number of former Celtic players who were in the squad for Scotland against Brazil in the World Cup opener in 1998. So the question was, how many former Celts can you name? Now, this could be people who played for Celtic after that tournament or played for Celtic before that tournament. Doesn't necessarily have to be Celtic players at that particular time, if you get me. So there are a number of names, and I guess it's he who dares who wants to give me a number.
Okay.
It's interesting how Leverkusen fucked it tonight. It really is.
I fucked it all right. I'll go. I only know one that's coming to my head, so.
Jesus.
One.
Steve.
Well,
yeah.
I'll just go two then.
Really? We're setting the bar that high? Two?
Well, I don't need to put myself under unnecessary pressure. If
Wow.
Stephen wants to go three, I know. If Stephen wants to go three, I'll say four if he wants. But
Ross, you take it, Big Chief. You go ahead.
What? Two. Right. Well, I'll say two, but then if I get the two, I'll go further. Right.
There was two. I'm not going to give it away. But...
I know it's so you've got Tom Boyd. John Collins.
Yeah, the two people who scored goals in that game.
Aye. Who else? Craig Burley.
Yep.
Paul Lambert.
Mm-hmm.
McNamara.
Yep.
Toshi McKinley.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Luis Figo.
Kind of struggling now. Money's that.
You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Money
Yeah,
is there.
there is. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 more.
3 more.
Stuart Kerr.
I think.
There was a goalkeeper.
Gordon Marshall. No. Johnny
I get the
Gould.
points. I get the
no, because I got the 2, you maniac.
No, he fucked it. I get the
I
points.
said 2.
You were like, if I get the 2, I'm gonna keep going, and you kept going, and you shafted it. You shafted it. That's like 8 or 9 points, Gav. That's a victory for myself, buddy.
The other answers were Darren Jackson, Jonathan Gould, and Simon Donnelly.
Aye.
Well done, Stephen. You were brilliant in that quiz. Well done.
Thanks very much, buddy. Thank you.
Aye. Okay. So, should I let Taylor the quizzes differently in the future, Stephen?
You should just not do a quiz ever again. That would be fantastic.
What would be your mastermind subject?
Crayons. No, I'm only joking. Anything. I don't mind, but some of the questions were wild, man. Like, I wasn't even fuck. When was Batatusta, whatever his fucking name is? When was he playing? Like, what era was he playing in?
Batatusta was playing.
Batista was
the
90s, early 90s.
The noughties.
Right, come on here. Like, I was born 94. I mean, 4 years old. He was playing like.
He was a tremendously famous football player. Like, I know players that played in the 70s that were famous, but I can't mind them, but I knew who they were.
Look, I've heard of his name. That's as far as it goes for me with whatever. Fuck off. You know what I'm trying to say?
See, the interesting thing about him, he started off in Argentina, of course. He played for River Plate, Boca Juniors, and Newell's Old Boys as well before he made the move to Europe. Quite interesting.
Right.
He kind of crossed the divide in Argentina for River Plate to Boca. Right, okay, so back to Celtic. So, guys, wanted to get your thoughts on your kind of pivotal moment in the season. I'm going to start off with myself, okay? I've not prepared much for this one, but it was the game where Celtic actually lost at Parkhead to Hearts, and I felt, obviously it wasn't a game that we took points from, but I felt it was pivotal in the fact that we for me, we hit rock bottom, and I felt that sometimes whenever you do that, the only way is up. I know that's a great punchline, but in terms of the season, we probably needed to get that out of our system before we could actually get better and regroup. The game was memorable for a number of points. Like, we were 2-0 down at half time, and that's how it finished. It was a Shankland header from a corner, I think it was, and a Stephen Kingsley free kick from just outside the box. And there was a vitriol in the stadium. People were shouting at Peter Lawwell. People were booing. It was getting quite toxic. The most toxic atmosphere that I've seen at Parkhead for a number of years. And Brendan Rodgers, he actually said in his comments after the game, he said it's an apology to the support. I don't think I've ever had to do that in all my lifetime. The performance today was nowhere near the level of what is expected as a Celtic player and a Celtic team. We lacked any desire in our defending. We lacked the drive when we had the ball and that intensity. we could have played all night and not scored. I think that kind of sums up how bad it was. What the reaction of that was is that we went on to record wins against Livingston, Dundee, Rangers, St Mirren and Ross County, which I felt steadied the ship. We only dropped points in 3 more games after that. It was 2 draws, and ironically, we lost again to Hearts when we played them in Edinburgh. But I felt that despite that horrible game to witness and to be part of, I felt we needed to go through that because sometimes you need a shake up, and that was almost like our intervention moment. So that's the one I went for. Perhaps not a typical one you would choose for a pivotal moment in the season, but I felt despite the fact that we did drop a couple more points throughout the season, we regrouped, we got better, and we stuck to our guns. And I think that the core members of the team started coming back following that. But that was probably our lowest point. But it never got worse than that. We never capitulated, which is the mark of champions. So that's the game that I went for as the most pivotal. Who would like to go next?
You can go if you want.
Well, we'll take it. You want the quiz. You can sit back and you can take the points for this as well. So it's all good. But I mean, like, I think you're right. Look, people obviously look at defeats as kind of low points. I referenced the Hearts game in terms of one of the lowest kind of feelings I had during that season. But I do get what you mean. You can flip that on its head and you kind of create a resilience. You create a kind of siege mentality after them sorts of games. And the comments that you read out that Roger said he was absolutely furious after that. But for me, I went with one of the Derby games, and the one in particular I went for. Now, overall impact on the season, probably not a massive impact, but just the squad wise and the character that Rogers talks about all the time. I thought it was the Agbrox game when we had Largabielke and Scales as the back two, and we still managed to go there and get the victory and get the result, which was incredible. For me, like, yes, we had really low points after that, and like you said, Gav, you can look at defeats and turn them on its head, and kind of creates that kind of the team, the effort, and to get you through the end of the season, and that's how champions do create it. But for me, that gave me confidence that the squad was good enough to compete, because that was a lot of the talk before them games was we didn't recruit well, which we didn't, and they obviously recruited players, and you hear that they had a rebuild, they're ready to kick on, they're ready to do this and do that and win trebles, and they do all their talking everywhere on social media and in the press. We keep quiet, remain calm, remain collected and composed going into these games. And I just thought the kind of circumstances against us in that game, get into that environment with no supporters and managing to pull off the result was fantastic. Kyogo again scoring a fantastic goal. Who is he again? England's number 1? No. Number 2? No. Number 3? No. Number 4? Jack Butland. That's who I'm talking about. But it's again the psychological edge that Kyogo had over him, and he's really pivotal in these games. And I just thought, for me, as I said, Gav, not maybe the overall picture of the season, but just that moment in time, everything being chucked against us, the narrative of the press, the reaction to the squad, the recruitment obviously being so close to summer, and getting into a game of Largabielke, who wasn't fancy throughout the season, and a bit part team with a lot of key players missing. I thought to get that result was a fantastic part of the season for me.
See, in that game, how pivotal was the moment where Largabielke made that mistake, where Dessers got his foot in ahead of Largabielke as he's about to make the motion to kick it. Now, from just a football fan, when I saw it, I thought, and that moment led to a goal, which was brought back, and VAR looked at that particular moment, and it was ruled that it was a foul against Largabielke. I felt watching that as a football fan that Dessers should have had the advantage, but it was pointed out to me after the game that the rules of the law stipulate that if you're in the motion of kicking it, then you can't put your foot in front of the other player. Only if you play the ball, you need to play the ball. So it was weird, because my instinct was it should be allowed to continue, but I was so relieved to have it spelled out to me that indeed is actually a foul. And it was, I guess, quite strong refereeing. You hear people like Dermot Gallagher, a former English referee, and he kind of is put on the spot to give his opinion. And I think he went against it, and he said, no, that should have been allowed as a goal. How important was it that the referee had the balls to actually make that call when it was brought back as a VAR decision. How pivotal was that moment, and then the contrast of how the game could have ended.
I mean, it was pivotal in that moment because, again, they could have gathered momentum from getting that goal. And look, again, the letter of the law stipulates that was a foul and it had to be called back. And we all talk about referees and performances, and look, we talk unconscious bias, and it does exist. We're not stupid. We're not going to try and recreate a narrative that it doesn't. But in that moment in time, for the referee to show that kind of, what would you call it, balls, as you said, Gavin, to make that decision stand, I thought was a good thing. And again, it could have spelled a bit of trouble for us because we've seen it before in the season previous. They got on top of us from Joe Hart just kicking the ball away, and they were on top of us like 10 to 15 minutes, and it kind of creates that, again, that mentality in the crowd that we can get after Celtic, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as that was cut out, we were fine. And this is what I'm saying again. Like, the feeling's weird. Playing them, we're comfortable, we hold the ball, we create space, we create opportunities, and obviously that's down to the way they play. They're not going to play the low block against us like every other SPFL team does, but it's just that air of confidence that we have. And I think what Ross said at the start as well, and we've argued and toed and froed about this, personnel and injuries, that played a lot into it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously the tactical side of the team came to the fore more when the injuries came back, but I do kind of go back to the point that we should have maybe done better without key players, because we should have the squad to compete at that level, missing a few in the round that, and still the squad players to come in to fill that gap. But we didn't, and that's fair enough. And when the key players come back, we just stormed the rest of the season. I just think it's mad to underestimate how good that actually was the first game. Because as I said, like the whole thing, if we had lost that game, could you imagine the atmosphere? Could you imagine the toxicity that you said about the Hearts game? Even then, it would have exploded. It would have been like, do you mean the hell opened up and we're all fall into it? I would have been in that trap, would have been raging. But we didn't. We came away with a victory. As I said, Kyogo with that fantastic goal. I think it was just before half time, wasn't it? I think it was. And it was a brilliant goal. And like the rest is history, as I say.
Beautiful goal. Ross, what moment have you picked from the season?
Well, these are going to laugh when I say this, probably. Because of what I've said in previous podcasts. I stand by what I said in previous podcasts because it's how I felt at the time. But I am warming to the idea. But for me, the pivotal moment of the season was when Celtic got Adam Ida in on a loan in the last day of the January window. And it's purely because, listen, I've made the case that in game, he hasn't done enough as such, like he fades in and out. But when you look at it, and I know he's not the only one that scored goals, he's not the only one in the last couple of months that's performed really well, but he scored a late goal at Fir Park, which for me was another pivotal moment, but I didn't pick it as the pivotal moment because in between, it's not as if after the Fir Park we went on a run. Then he scores the two goals, the two penalties at Easter Road. One of them's really late. And then for me, the biggest goal of the lot was the one to get his 3-2 up at Ibrox. If he doesn't score that goal, Rangers get back to 2 each. If he doesn't score that goal so quickly after them getting level, I think we probably go on and lose that game. And then do we recover for that? I think it's very difficult. So for me, that's another. That's 3 huge goals in the context of the season, and getting Adam Ida over the line and signing in the dotted line on the final day of the January transfer window. Whatever people think of him, he has scored big goals, huge goals at huge times in games, and he has helped us massively get over the line. I said when he came in, if he got 6 to 10 goals for us between him coming in and the end of the season, then he'll have done an amazing job, and a job that probably would have helped us get to the league title. He done exactly that. I think he maybe even scored 11. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Certainly between the 8 league goals, was it?
And 2 assists.
And 2 assists. Well, I mean, he still between 6 and 10 goals he got anyway, and some of them were really, really huge goals. So for me, the pivotal moment was Brendan Rodgers pulling that rabbit out the hat. I think he was sort of known to him and he obviously doesn't fancy and we needed another striker. It was getting to. It wasn't desperate, but it was getting to the desperate stage because we were putting all this pressure on Kyogo to do it all alone, and there wasn't a lot of goals coming from all over the pitch other than Matt O'Reilly. So for me, getting Adam Ida in and adding the goals to the game and that other option to take the pressure off Kyogo was absolutely pivotal for me, and fair play to Adam Ida for doing the job after the negativity when he came in.
Well, fair play for you for actually bringing it up. I think it's original that you've not actually went for an actual game itself. I wanted to speak about Adam Ida, so let's kind of continue that a wee bit. I guess the question that will be asked here is, do we want to buy him compared to other people at my off scales or somebody better? But the impact that he made, you can't overstate the significance of what he did. You spoke about, I know that one big thing, an emphasis from yourself was the personnel, how important the personnel was in the league achievement. When things weren't working out for Kyogo, when the service wasn't going there, Adam Ida was an alternative. And whenever we were playing, especially away games, he was the man where we could actually, rather than play through the press, we could chip the ball to Ida. He could hold it up. He's got that physicality and speed. He can turn the man as well, and he can drive on, as what you saw at Rugby Park against Kilmarnock. Like, his performance against Kilmarnock last week was tremendous. It was brilliant. He was involved with everything, and his attitude is great as well. And he could tell that he was the third choice striker at Norwich, and then coming here to Celtic, a chance to win a championship and to be a key figure in that as well. Brilliant. And the fact, obviously, that the Irish connection as well is the kind of cherry on top. So his impact is undeniable. Stephen, going to come to yourself on this one. Would it be foolish not to buy him now?
No, it wouldn't be foolish. I'm still in the camp. If he comes, fair enough. If he doesn't, then so be it. I do agree that his impact has been a big one on the team, but I think Norwich want him back. I think they've made that pretty clear from what I can see anyway, from the rumours coming from their side of Twitter. They're letting go of Sidney van Hooijdonk, and they're taking up the option to buy. So, and they're in again, they'll probably need a striker, and Adam Ida, he's come up and the Celtic have done a great job.
And I get this, still, haven't they?
Daniel Farke, he got the boot, didn't he? I look, I agree with what Ross is saying, but sometimes I think we have this player that comes in on a 6-month loan with no option to buy, right? I don't know why that is. If we were interested in the long term, why did they not include that option? Because we've done it with Bernardo, we've done it with the likes of Jota and Carter Vickers. Was he just a stopgap and proved to be a good bit of business? He could well be, like Ross said, the final day of the season. Go ahead, Ross. Sorry.
You can't. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in, but you can't just lay that at Celtic's door. The other club, i.e. Norwich, maybe didn't want to put that sort of option in. It was, look, we want them to go out and get games. You just need a striker for the end of the season.
That's fair. But I agree with that. It has to be both clubs that agree. I just think that I don't want us to jump on this signing and bring it in for 5 or 6 million, whatever the quoted fee may be, and then we miss out on other targets. We miss out on someone we could bring in or someone else that's out there on the horizon. Who was that? Bromby's striker, Neatsgarden. We've been linked with him for a couple of windows, and it seems like that rumour never goes away. If we sign Adam Ida, we'll never see him in the Celtic shirt and all that. I know it's not a hypothetical speaking here. Yes, again, he scored vital goals, but I do think sometimes when he plays, and Ross did allude to it, he goes missing in and out of games and kind of fits and starts. He was fantastic away to Kilmarnock. I thought, as you said, Gavin, and rightly so, that different option to play through their midfield area, straight up to the striker. He holds it in, connects the midfield, and you build up the play from there. I thought that was a good bit of tactical awareness by Rodgers to do that, and in terms of overcoming what they were doing to us earlier in the season. At 50-50, I think me and Franley are both the same thinking here. We spoke about this last time around. 50-50 with him. I don't think it's one of him ones I would be really excited about if we do. He's not a starter. He's going to be an impact player coming off, and maybe at different options of the Kyogo now and then. It won't be every game. Maybe every third or fourth game you'll see him coming in to get a start. But 5 to 6 million is a hefty fee for someone to sit on the bench, and I'd be hoping that we'd be looking at someone to come in and better Kyogo, to better him, and make him fight for his place, and see where that takes us. Again, I'll reiterate: if we get him in, fair enough. But I'm neither here or there with it, Gavin, to be honest.
Okay. So we put the question out. We've got a few people coming back. So buy again, definitely. From Lindsay, buy, but not for the price stated. And I do appreciate that 5 million, if that is, the bounty for him, it is substantial. And from Anthony, he did everything that you could ask for from a loan signing. It's crystal clear that he wants to stay. It's happening. And I don't think it will take 5 million plus to make it happen. Interesting to see him from Celtic. 88. If it's 3 or 4 million, I would take him. Again, price is a massive thing, and whenever you've got the transition of a new manager at Norwich, depends what the politics is like at Carrow Road. If they want him to stay, if the manager wants to take a look at him before he sanctions the exit, or that decision might be taken out of his hands. The board at Norwich might recognise that they've got money that they could easily get from Celtic if it's at the right price. It's interesting, and obviously people were talking about Majowski as well for perhaps a higher amount. And then let's not forget there was that boy that we were strongly rumoured to get at the start of the season, Kvistgarden, I think he was, a Scandinavian guy.
That's what I was talking about there.
Yeah, and he's not a particularly tall person, but I think his dribbling skills are very, very good. It kind of reminds me of Eddie when he was dribbling. And a lot of people are talking about Edward as well. The only thing that I find unrealistic about Celtic buying Edward is the wages that he will undoubtedly be on at Crystal Palace right now. I think I don't know what his motivation is. Does he want to come back to Celtic? I don't know. But in general, he had a great talking point. Ross, thank you very much for bringing it up. Now, I want to talk about Matt O'Reilly and the impact that he has had. Now, Matt O'Reilly finishes the season as the second top goal scorer in the league. 18 goals, 13 assists. So I think for goal involvements alone, he beats everybody for that. I think whenever you look at the context of it, it was a 1.5 million signing from MK Dons. In the first 2 years under Ange, he got a hell of a lot of minutes under Ange, but I don't think he was always a first team starter. I think at times he had to maybe sit on the bench and come on as a sub, especially whenever you had people like Moy playing, Hatate and Callum McGregor. And you remember last season at one point when McGregor was out with that facial injury, O'Reilly had a new skill to learn when he was playing as a number 6, and it was a different position for him. I think he's really come on leaps and bounds. And he's been a mainstay this season. He's been, despite the age of him, I think he's 21, 22. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's shown so much experience beyond his years, and we really have depended on him. So the impact that he's made, the stats are there, the leadership that he's shown, the fact that he was even stepping up to take penalty kicks, and we're kind of left now with the question of the transfer prospect for him. I know that Atletico Madrid were rumoured to come in midway through the season. I felt that kind of put him out of kilter a little bit, even though you might not admit it to yourself. I think even the fact that you're aware that people have that price tag on you, I think he admitted to that whenever you say 25 million, 15 million, whatever the figure is, whenever people actually put a number on you, and at that young age, it's difficult to get that out your heads. I think he was fully focused in Celtic, but that added kind of complication of the expectancy that he is a big-time player and that he needed to live up to that. I felt for a period it put him out of kilter, but he came right back into form again at the right time of the season. So a fantastic player, and I guess there's one argument to say, who would you compare him to in Celtic's recent history? Who's he better than? He's right up there. A very talented player and quite cultured in his style as well. I would actually kind of compare him a little bit to Xavi Alonso whenever he was a midfielder. Great passer of the ball who didn't have to be that mobile. But Ross, one of the inevitable conversations about him will be, is he going to go in the season? I'm going to put it to you that sometimes we don't sell when the time is right. And as much as I would take to see him leave, I think if we get 25 million minimum, then I would sanction the move if I was in that position to give it the green light. I think it's the right time for him to go, to develop as a player, and we can use that money, God willing, to reinvest in the squad. I think it's the right time to capitalise. If he stays another season, he might not have the same kind of market appeal as what he does right now. I think we need to go for it, strike while the iron is hot. What's your thoughts?
Listen, I can't disagree with that. It does make perfect sense. But then you could look at the other side of the coin and say, well, if he has another season like he has had this season, and he's as impactful in the Champions League, I think he'll still hold the same sort of price tag as he does right now. We got another season out of him. Listen, that's best case scenario. I think whether he goes this season or we keep him, you're only delaying the inevitable that he will go. And I know everybody eventually leaves the club, but what I mean by that is in the next season or two. Listen, I would love to see Matt O'Reilly stay at Celtic for his entire career, because I think he's an absolutely phenomenal, cultured, just tremendous athlete, dedicated to his craft. He's everything you want a professional football player to be, and we got him for £1.5 million. It's tremendous bit of business. It's up there in terms of monetary and what we've got out of him. It's up there with Amaravchik by. Maybe not quite in the realms of Henrik Larsson, but I just think he's been the best midfielder, the best player in Scotland this season. I think he's our best player. He's just an outstanding footballer. He's got everything that you want a midfield player to have. And I have to say, I'd sort of made my peace the way we were going to lose Matt O'Reilly this summer, when we obviously rebuffed Atletico Madrid in the January window. He did lose, as you say, and rightly alluded to, Gavin, that he lost that bit of form, obviously, and it could be that his head was turned. I don't think it was. I think it was, like you said, it's that price tag was put on him, that number. But then, again, he found his way again towards the end of the season, the most important stage of the season. But in that period where he wasn't at his best, I started to think, right, okay, this isn't great at the minute, but it might mean that we'll get to keep him for another season. And I'd made my peace previously, but then I started to hold on to that wee bit of hope that he maybe wouldn't go. But then he started playing brilliant again, and towards the end of the season, that Kilmarnock game, the game against Rangers, he was head and shoulders above anybody in the park, and I include Cal McGregor in that, and he was outstanding in the Rangers game, and he's been outstanding for the last maybe 3 or 4 games. But I think it's going to be very, very difficult to hold on to Matt O'Reilly. I don't think he's making noises to get out the club. I think he loves being here. I think he's happy here. But if the teams that are being floated, if Atletico Madrid come back in, an Inter Milan or something, I think it's, for me, 30 million minimum I would be looking for. I know you said 25.
I probably undersold him, yeah.
But I would be looking. I think you could get 30 million for Matt O'Reilly, and I think that if a team comes in of the stature we're talking about with a £30 million bid, I think Celtic probably take that offer. Whether Matt O'Reilly wants to go or not, I think it would be taken out of his hands, because I think Celtic would say we need to take that money. Similar to Kieran Tierney, where that big bid came in. I don't know if Kieran Tierney was making noises to move, but for the outside looking in, it felt like he wasn't, but it was taken out of his hands. But also, Kieran Tierney was so talented that he couldn't keep playing in Scottish football. He was far too good for that. He had to go and use all his talent and test himself at the highest level. And I think that's similar with Matt O'Reilly. Albeit, by the way, as much as I'm saying Matt O'Reilly isn't making noises, I think that if a club like Atletico or Inter Milan came in, he would want to explore that, and I wouldn't blame him. in much the same way as Ange Postecoglou wanted to explore being the manager of Tottenham Hotspur. It's listen, Scottish football is not. It's not one of the top 5 leagues. Celtic are one of the biggest clubs in the world, and if we played in a different league, these guys would stay with us for the duration of their careers. I think Matt O'Reilly wouldn't want to play his football anywhere else. He said it himself that he's never played for fans, and I know he's not played for a lot of big clubs. He's never played for fans like our fan base is fanatical, and he probably won't again. Albeit, I mean, that's maybe a bit harsh, because I dare say that the Atletico Madrid, Inter Milan fans are pretty fanatical. They're big clubs and they're playing in a bigger league. If Matt O'Reilly goes to one of the teams and we get £30 million for him, I won't hold any grudges, but I'll be absolutely gutted, because, as I've said, and we all know, he's a tremendous, tremendous football player. And the biggest compliment I can pay Matt O'Reilly is, whenever he's playing, whenever he receives the ball, he never looks flustered. He's always got time. And even when he hasn't got time, he still looks like he's got more time than others, because he just finds himself in the right place. He reads the game so well. And into the bargain, as you've alluded to, his passing is outstanding. He sees balls for maybe 30 yards out, threading it through. He can link up with Kyogo. He can cross it. He can shoot. He's got every attribute for me, and every attribute to go right to the top of the game. I think he's 23-year-old. I absolutely love the guy, and I can't speak highly enough of him. I hope he doesn't go, but he probably will.
It does sound like a bit of a love letter to Matt O'Reilly, and I'm sure we all can agree with you on that one. Stephen, Matt O'Reilly, he's a smart individual. Ironically, I actually think that his playing style would be better suited on the continent rather than in England, perhaps due to maybe a lack of explosiveness, a lack of pace. But that doesn't mean to say that he couldn't hack it in England. Ironically, though, the flip side of it is that you're going to get the big bucks from the English clubs, perhaps not an Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid. You'll get good money, but not great money from them. Where do you stand in it? Because it's going to dominate the football chat in the summer. So where do you stand in it now?
I think we can all recognise a quality player when we have one, and Matt O'Reilly certainly is that. And as I said before, the dog's going mad. As I said before, I love his actual story in football, from leaving Fulham at a young age and training in a local park by himself, getting the move to MK Dons, and then being recognised by the likes of Liverpool, because he was like the best performing midfielder outside of the top leagues in England for a long period of time. And then obviously Celtic took the opportunity to bring him in, and his development at Celtic's been incredible to watch. Do you know what I mean? From the fact that in Ange's second season, I think he only got 4 goals, I believe, and he didn't score it near Christmas time, but he still had double figures assists. And now this season, you're combining the assists with goals, and his goals involvement, assist involvement is incredible. And I think, like you said, he's in the top of the league anyway for that, and he made it into the top 10 of the Champions League as well in terms of assist making. So again, it's fantastic and testament to him. And in regards to fee, I mean, you're looking at this, and I've heard people say 50 million, that type of bracket. Look, for me, I'm looking at 30 to 35 million, and then you start talking. 25 million is 6 years ago now. It's Kieran Tierney money. It's Jota money. It's done. It's gone. We should be looking for the higher level fees, and that 30 million is a good base point for that. And you can kind of work your way up with add-ons and things of that nature. I just think he's destined for the top. And you mentioned continental leagues. Like, could you imagine him in Serie A, just that kind of tactical game, slow in possession, building it up, and being that beast that he is for us, getting into the box, making them 8 runs. In Spain, playing the likes of Barcelona, lovely kind of passing around and playing intricate passes, triangles across the pitch. He could fit into any team, in my opinion. Even in the EPL, I mean, where would you start? I know West Ham, Brighton are apparently interested in him, but I think he could make that jump without having that bridge like everyone else did. Virgil van Dijk needed to go to Southampton to get his move to Liverpool, but I think Matt O'Reilly could go from us to a big team. And again, we're a big team, but I'm saying, like, in terms of a a Man City, a Spurs, or maybe a Barcelona, Inter Milan, AC Milan. I think he could just go there from now. Is the way Rodgers is used in this season is fantastic, and I like what Ross said as well. The way he takes the ball in the half turn all the time, he's always in space. He's always picking the right pass, and he's adding the goals to his game. 18 goals, 18 assists, and he's just a phenomenal football player, in my opinion. And I like the fact that Ross brought up Lubo Murajovic. 100%. He's probably in the bracket for the kind of bargain signing in terms of that. He's just phenomenal. And Galvin, and you're right, this will continue all summer. But I think for me, this will be concluded very early on, I believe. If he's going to leave the club, I don't think Rodgers will allow this to drag out. I don't think he can afford to, because he'll need to know if he needs to replace him. He'll need to know the targets he has lined up to replace Matt O'Reilly. I'm sure he does. Would I be sorry to see him go? 100%. He's given me some, again, fantastic memories. These guys come in, make an impact. It's like what Postecoglou said. They make an impact for a while, and then it does walk on through. And you remember them for the impact that they made at the club. And Matt O'Reilly's been fantastic and so humble. And I love how honest he is in interviews about hitting shit penalty kicks or that type of stuff. And it's nice to see that. Nice to see that kind of human aspect of him coming through. And there was a post on Twitter a few weeks ago. He plays games with local kids in hospitals off his own bat, volunteering, and they're ill, and he goes down and spends his time with them, and that's just a fantastic human being. And Rodgers always speaks about characters. I know it's a kind of a meme or a gif now where he's like beautiful characters and beautiful human beings. Matt O'Reilly falls into that bracket for me. Superb guy, superb footballer, and he will be, in my opinion, the record ever fee that we receive. And I hate talking like that, because we find this amazing when we're getting all these fees in. But like you said, Gav, you don't see it transpire onto the pitch. You don't see it transpire into us really going fucking hammer and tong and improving the starting lineup. But see where the money we have banked with the Champions League. See where the money we have banked if Matt O'Reilly goes. The board can't hide. They can't hide. They're sitting on a big wad of cash, and they cannot hide from the fans no more. It's open. It's in the accounts. We can all see it.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Brilliant points from both of you. And the kind of final sentiment that you're talking about, with you don't want to see like one of your prized assets go. But if Matt O'Reilly does go for like an enormous fee, then we're going to use that as an example to the next Matt O'Reilly who's down in England and saying, look, you could go to these clubs in England who might not play you, come up to Scotland. We'll play you at Parkhead, become a legend, win trophies, gain experience, play Champions League, and then when the time is right, we'll let you go for the right fee. And that's the example that we've used year on year as part of that transfer policy. It's just difficult because we want to make momentum in Europe. And if he was to stay as part of our core midfield, and we did make some smart moves in the transfer market, think of the potential. It's that kind of catch-22, you know. Now, what can I move on? A bit of a change of tact before we talk about the remaining kind of parts of the league win, which has been monumental. I want to do an On This Day feature. I've not done one of them in a while, and it kind of ties into the top that I'm wearing today. So 20 years ago, it was on the 22nd of May in the year 2004, Henrik Larsson scores twice in his last competitive game for the club when Celtic beat Dunfermline 3-1 in the Scottish Cup final. Now, I hate goodbyes. I find it difficult, and whenever I watched Henrik leaving, that was probably the most difficult one that you would ever witness in your lifetime. So there's not much more that you can speak about Henrik the man. It's cliched because everybody's done it. You can't really say anything that nobody else has covered already. But that game itself, it was 20 years ago now. I don't know if people feel it was longer or less. It was only yesterday. But the actual game itself, it was at Hampden, a full crowd. We actually went 1-0 down to Dunfermline, and it took us until almost the hour mark before we pulled it back. The Dunfermline goal scorer was a guy called Skerla. I'm looking to see if there's anybody that I actually recognise from the Dunfermline team. I don't think so. Craig Brewster, he was playing. Derek Young, Barry Nicholson, Gary Mason, Darren Young as well. But for Celtic, Larsson scored in the 58th minute. He scored again in the 71st minute, and then Petrov sealed the win in the 84th minute. And just to kind of run through the names that we had in that team at the time, cast your mind back, David Marshall in goal, Didi Ragat, Jackie McNamara, Stanislav Varga, Bobo Baldi, Neil Lennon, Stelian Petrov, Stephen Pearson, Alan Thompson, Henrik Larsson, and Chris Sutton. Only 20 years ago, I'm sure many Celtic supporters shed a tear on that day. Do any of you guys remember, were you as well when you watched that?
I was
I actually
as
don't.
a young pup then. Like what age would I have been? So I've been probably 9 then. I was more than likely with my granda. I always watched football with my granda, but I do remember parts of that game, obviously, and in terms of his goodbye, and that kit brings it back to you. And what brought it back to me as well, when the Celtic Player of the Year awards, he was on the stage and he was crying. Did any of you see that?
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
Aye.
What a man. And as you said, Gav, with all wax lyrical about him, there's nothing really else more to say. But like you say, you hate goodbyes, and look, he was sensational for us. Do you know what I mean? He was the best in my lifetime anyway, probably the best ever as well, best ever Celt. But like, incredible guy, and just watching him filled with emotion again, it just shows you how much we mean to him as well as a club and what we bring to him. Sometimes you forget what we can add to a footballer's life. So I mean, what we can bring to them. We always think what they can add to us and what they can do for us on the pitch, but see what we can bring to them as an individual, the happiness, the joy, welcoming their families. Their kids are born in Scotland. There's always a link there, and we treat them like legends. And he's, as we always say, the king of kings. And I think Joe Hart as well said this with top of goodbyes on the microphone on the pitch about his family, how welcome they've been, how welcome he's feeling. And we can't forget that. It has to be a two-way street for it to work at a club. And I think the supporters embody that, and the players who come in embody the spirit of what it is to play for Celtic.
Yeah. Well, Ross, speaking of goodbyes, and it's a kind of good segue to turn it back to Joe Hart, which is another key feature of the intrigue of this season. And there's so many talking points, but Joe Hart announced midway through the season that he was going to retire. He said that in his interview, he told Stevie Woods, and who at first he was disbelieving of Hart's decision, and then he told the squad, and then it got announced publicly. They did it in the right way. And the send-off that he got in the last minute part was fantastic. The tifo was brilliant. Hart obviously visibly emotional, and Stephen touched upon it. The bond that Hart and his family have felt with the city of Glasgow, with the Celtic fans, is endearing. You want to hear things like that. It's a feel-good factor, and I'm glad that he can come back up to Glasgow anytime he wants, as an ambassadorial role, whatever he wants. Probably might not happen. You know, I think he might go back to England and settle there, but the bond is there, and he'll always be fond of Celtic. We'll always be fond of him. Goodbyes are difficult, but I think he's probably done it in the right way. Some people were saying that they wish that he could maybe reverse his decision because we could use his leadership for next season. But I think it's good to leave when you leave the public wanting more. I think he's done it on his terms. He doesn't want to leave Celtic in a year down the line whenever people start to doubt his ability again. Just to leave at the right time, to leave people wanting more, I think is the best you can do. And you leave the best image, your reputation is intact. What's your thoughts on his decision, the impact that he's made over the 3 years as well, when we really, really needed leadership in a team that was, you know, apart from Callum McGregor, we never really had many people of that ilk?
Well, first of all, I think that you're exactly right. I think he has left at the right time in terms that he'll go out on at the top. And listen, if he'd retired at the end of last season, he would have went out with a treble. But I don't think he would have went out as well thought of by the Celtic fans as what he is now, because I think in this sort of last 6 months, or however long it has been for he said, or he put it into the public domain that he was going to retire, I think that he's played quite possibly his best football in a Celtic jersey. And he has left the fans wanting more. Not everybody, but I think there's a lot of fans who have slowly changed their opinion on him. I think he could go for another year or two, but does he go for another year and then in 6 months' time maybe I should have just retired at the end of the season. This is it's starting to catch up with you now. You just don't know. So I think for him personally, he's made the right decision. And listen, he goes with my best wishes. For me, he's been a great player for Celtic over the piece. It's his third season. He's done a double, a treble, and we hope for all the world a second double. And I don't think his experience can be understated at all. I think Cal McGregor's alluded to it. I think he maybe spoke about it in the pitch. He spoke about it in interviews before that as well, and how, and even Joe Hart himself, if you have seen that interview he done for Celtic TV last midweek, he talked about how he wanted to come in and be that sort of experienced voice in the dressing room, but he also didn't. He also said like you could come in there and Cal McGregor could be like, "Well, I'm the captain," kind of thing. But Cal McGregor quickly realised that Joe Hart could help him, and he could be somebody that Joe Hart could lean on him. He could lean on Joe Hart, and anybody in the squad could. And I think, listen, a guy that's coming into Celtic who's won Premier League titles is invaluable, especially coming into the squad that he came into. It was very inexperienced, and it was needing a lot of work. And that one transfer window in the summer wasn't going to fix it. But Joe Hart took us a long way to helping us through that sticky period. Even alluded to Selly came in, and it was 3 wins and 3 losses, and Joe Hart would have helped that team along with Postecoglou and Cal McGregor. They would have helped that team get the belief to go on and do what they did for the remainder of that season. But Joe Hart, he's played at Man City, he's won Premier League titles. He's never actually outright said it, but you can see it etched all over his face and in the emotion when he talks that he's never played for a fan base like this. He's never been lauded. He's never seen fanatical fans the way they turn up when you win a league title at the stadium hours after it, whether you're playing home or away. Once that league title's won, the fans will go and they will show their respect and laud the players for what they've given us. And I just think the first moment he seen that, I think he was in. He bought into Celtic, and it's like he said, he's not going to explain to people or try and do it justice what it's like playing for this club. But it's just I think he summed it up perfectly when he said it's just a feeling. You don't know until you're actually in it, and then you either get it or you don't. And Joe Hart has got it in spades.
Really well said. And Stephen, the other aspect of Joe Hart's career, which is really intriguing, is the redemption story, where at one point he was England's #1, playing for the league winners. Probably he was a main character in one of the most famous games that you will remember, whenever Man City beat QPR on the last day of the season in stoppage time. You saw a celebration. He's still a young man back then. He was on top of the world, going to tournaments with England, competing at the highest level in Europe. And then near the end of his 20s, he was left in the scrap heap. One of the top managers in Europe come in, he's deemed surplus to requirements, and his career just nosedived from there. But the kind of redemptive arc of coming to Scotland, to Celtic, to rediscover your form, to rediscover your enjoyment in the sport is not something that many people go through, but it's a great fairy tale to end your career. Thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, one of the most hard-hitting things that I ever seen him say, it was quite recently, I think it was probably one of the interviews he's done, was at the time he joined us, he didn't actually know his place in football anymore. He didn't know where he belonged. He didn't know what his role was. He didn't know what to do himself in terms of his career. And when Celtic came knocking, he wanted to take the opportunity and see where it took him. 3 years later, 3 league titles, 1 treble, could be another potential double on the way, which would be fantastic. And we all had we all preempted it. Well, we all kind of fought differently about Joe before he wore a Celtic shirt. Me especially, I thought he was always arrogant, cocky, one of them people. And obviously you don't follow Man City. I didn't follow England. Do you know what I mean? Particularly Eiler. So always looking from the outside in, thinking he's a bit of a fucking dick. Do you know when you ever see him in the tunnel and he's fucking slapping John Terry in the head and all that type of stuff? Like, what is wrong with this fella? But yeah, I think with Red Scotland, Guardiola knocked his confidence. And you have to remember as well, he went to Spurs, and I think it was Nuno came in and said he wasn't fast enough anymore to be a professional footballer. And that knocked his confidence as well. He went to Torino, didn't do particularly well there, was languishing around West Ham and Burnley, teams of that nature, being a third choice goalkeeper. And do you know what I mean? So that's going to play on your mind, that your confidence levels are going to shoot way down, and you're going to question where you belong in football. And I think that what's that saying? We needed him, but he needed us. So it was the right move for both clubs, and took me a while to get on board with it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend I was a Joe Hart fan from the start. I definitely wasn't. But as the years have gone on and the years he's represented the club, you can see how much we mean to him. And I think Ross is right. He never experienced this at City. Yeah, he experienced more glamour and luxury and all that type of thing, but he never experienced the fanatics that we have as supporters, the 24/7 pressure that you feel in Glasgow to perform at your best. He never experienced that kind of having to be the best version of himself day in, day out. I mean, bumping into people on the street, because it's a very, very small place, Glasgow, in respect of the England and things of that nature. So I mean, so you have to win all the time, you have to be professional all the time, you have to be on top of your game all the time. He didn't experience that at City. That Etihad is empty most weeks. Do you know what I mean? That's the running joke about them. Do you know what I mean? There's blue seats everywhere, even when they're doing well. But with ourselves, like Ross said, we're on top of the team. We're supporting them. We're criticising them. We're there week in, week out, and like look at the scenes when we won the league, when we clinched it. We're back at Parkhead, and do you know what I mean? Waiting there 2 to 3 hours till the team come back near midnight. It's packed. There's music playing and there's flares going off, and the players are soaking this all in. And I think what Joe said as well is, and I think Brian McGarry said it there, we've humbled him. Like, he's looking at this being like, this is amazing. This is incredible. Soaking it all up, soaking it all in. Like he said in his post-match interview, he's not thinking he's done yet. He's got one more big game ahead of him, and he's all in for it, and he's going to perform at his optimum levels. And he's just been a fantastic leader. And I love the fact that he said that about Callum McGregor. You look for these wee details in the interviews. It's like Callum McGregor let him be Joe Hart. Let him be that guy, his sounding board. Let him be someone he could bounce information off. Because he alluded to the fact that he was in different dressing rooms and people were shutting them down, and that's not your space. I'm the captain of this club, but where Callum McGregor delegates roles and delegates to people what they're good at. And I think Joe really blossomed out of that. And Stevie Woods, by the way, Stevie Woods gets a lot of credit from every goalkeeper that's played for Celtic. He must be an incredible coach. Fraser Foster said he made a big difference in his career. Craig Gordon, he helped him through rehab of his injury, and then he came in, had a good career with Celtic. And Joe Hart has said the exact same thing about him. And I do really like the big guy. I love the big guy now. So it's because sometimes you get players who, Ross and Gav, yourselves, come in and give you the old throwaway comments. Oh, it was my dream to play for this club. It was a dream to walk on the surface of Parkhead and experience it. But no, Joe Hart means it, and I really believe that. And he's been a fantastic ambassador, a fantastic servant for the club. And I think someone said in the comments, it's great that he's going to be a pundit for the BBC for the Euros. I've seen Postecoglou is going to be a pundit on the ITV side of things as well. So it's going to be quite fun to watch. But I'll miss Joe Hart. Should he stay for another season? Absolutely not. It's the right time for him to leave. He's leaving on a high. He's leaving on a league championship at the moment. And let's make it a double for him. A double celebration for Joe Hart.
Yeah, this is the final encore. This cup final at the weekend, and that's it. Before we conclude the podcast for tonight, and I know that we're now almost 2 hours, which is a good running time for us. I think that's like kind of average for us, isn't it?
It's average, yeah.
I wanted to speak about 2 players who have been pivotal in the league success, and there's been lots written about them. So, but we'll just try and get our own thoughts on this. I want to talk about Liam Scales. I want to talk about James Forrest, but we'll start off with Liam Scales. And he's been spoken about, probably one of the most spoken about players this season. He's been a people have been venting, people have been praising him. He's had one hell of a roller coaster of a year. Stephen, earlier on, you were talking about your most pivotal game of this season, and you spoke about the first game against Rangers at Ibrox, and I remember that Liam Scales, to people's surprise and to injuries, he was in the starting lineup, and he ended up getting man of the match. And one of the things I said after that game, whenever we won 1-0 and he got man of the match, I was saying nobody can take that away from him. No matter what happens in his Celtic career, even if it nosedives from here on in, you can always look back at that moment with pride, and that he marshalled a Celtic defence through a difficult game at Ibrox when the odds were against us, and we managed to get the win, and he got man of the match. He didn't disgrace himself. But fast forward to the end of the season, and it wasn't just a one game effort. He was a main player in the season for us, and he's contributed so much. Obviously, I don't want to be patronising in the language that I use right now, because let's be honest, he is not what you would say a proper Celtic player in terms of the quality that you feel that a defender should embody, especially whenever you compare him to Cameron Carter-Vickers, which a lot of people do kind of pale in comparison to. Let's not get twisted. But he's been extremely important, and a lot of difficult moments. I felt that even in Europe, to an extent, he acquitted himself well. I think in one of the away games in Eindhoven, was it? I felt he played rather well compared to Lagerbielke. Overall, we wouldn't have won this league without him. Everybody had to pull together, and he especially so. So he's probably had the year of his life as a professional. Who knows what will happen? But I think it's only fitting that we recognise how well he's done. But to kind of balance it out, I don't think he should be starting alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers next season. I think we need to do our recruitment correctly, upgrade. And I'm happy to keep him as a squad player, and I'm happy to know that he can do a job whenever he needs to fill in. But I think it's only fitting that we recognise what he's done, and nobody's above praise and nobody's below criticism. And I think we need to recognise his place in this team, this championship winning team this year. Ross, what's your thoughts on
that? Well, if we're just going to concentrate on his, like what he's given us this season, it's been a massive surprise. And I think I always remember, I can't remember exactly when it was in the season, but Brendan Rodgers was asked about him. It was well after that first Rangers game. He'd had a good lengthy run in the team, but I don't remember exactly when it was. And I just remember Rodgers being asked, it might have been after a European game, and he was asked about Liam Scales, and Rodgers says, well, he's outstanding. And he said, he's probably one of the biggest surprises in my whole managerial career. That's the biggest compliment you could possibly pay Liam Scales, and that's coming for his manager. We can say, you've alluded to it there, Gavin, we can say like what his deficiencies are, but in this league campaign, he has been the mainstay in that centre back. Whoever it is playing alongside him. But obviously, we've had the injuries to Cameron Carter-Vickers, who is by far our best defender. And for me, when he plays, Celtic are a much, much, much better team. I think Liam Scales, when he's asked to defend, just like say that game against Rangers, it wasn't backs to the wall, that first Glasgow derby, but we were asked to defend for long periods in that game, and Liam Scales stood up to it. And I think he's done that when we've been asked to defend, even in the Champions League, and he stood up to it. And it's a big but, and it's not taking away from what he's done this season, because over the piece, he has been one of our biggest players that has took us to this league title, and that I'll thank him for forever. But for me, you've said it yourself, I think everybody agrees that he can't be Carter-Vickers' partner going into next season. I think he definitely is a very good player to have in and around the squad. He would be that third sort of option, if you like. But I think the issue I've got, as I've said there, I think when he's asked to defend, it's very good. But my biggest issue, and I think it was glaring in the last Glasgow derby at Parkhead, and it's probably my only massive, it's my only real possible worry against Rangers is in these bigger games. I think teams have started to, early on in the season, even the Champions League, it wasn't as apparent. But I think certainly in that last Rangers game, Rangers were quite happy to leave Liam Scales on the ball. So they would, Carter Vickers would give him it, and sometimes Carter Vickers would get it back. And I know he obviously played that diagonal ball that set up Maeda for the second goal. But for the most part, and certainly in that first half, Rangers allowed Liam Scales to be the man to bring it out. And he gave it away, or he held on to it too long. He was very indecisive. And listen, it's his first real full season in a Celtic jersey, so he is inexperienced. Rodgers might coach that into him, and with age, that calmness might come, that better decision making might come. But is that going to come as quickly as the start of next season? I'm not so sure. So for me, that's why I would go out in the summer and try and make one of our priorities to get a partner for Cameron Carter-Vickers. Albeit, by the way, we bloody have to hold on to him. Probably more than holding on to Matt O'Reilly, as much as Matt O'Reilly has been outstanding, and he's obviously technically a better player than Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think Carter-Vickers is one player that we cannot afford to let go this summer. I don't think we will. I think there might be interest, but I don't think it will be off the level of interest in terms of stature of club that would come in from, would be the same level as for Matt O'Reilly. But going back to Scales, he has been outstanding for us this season, and I thank him a lot for that. But his deficiencies, bringing the ball out and his passing, is big issues for me, and that is one of my big worries, or my possibly only worry for going into Saturday.
Aye. Really well said. Before we go on to kind of James Forrest, Stephen, which I'll get your thoughts on, but Scales, it's kind of the year of the underdog for him. He saw off competition from Nat Phillips. Christ, that seems like a lifetime ago. Saw off Lagerbielka, Noropsky, even whenever Noropsky came back to full fitness. Saw off Welsh as well, who was a tried and tested defender at Celtic Park. We know his deficiencies, but he stood up and it counted, and it's worth remembering the people that got us here to this victory. But on a slightly more positive note, James Forrest, I don't know if you would call this an Indian summer that he's had, but he got the news today that he's been selected for the Scotland squad. Now, James Forrest, let's not forget that under Postecoglou, it was pretty much 2 years of his career that was practically just written off, just a footnote. But Forrest just came roaring back whenever we depended on him, and it's incredible, really, how somebody can be so far out of the picture, and how important he's been, how significant he's been in for this running. And whenever we've got a plethora of wingers, he has shown people that despite his lack of explosiveness now, he is so mature with possession. And I even wasn't too sure if Rodgers would start him against Rangers at Parkhead, but he did, and he didn't put a foot wrong. He was brilliant. I thought he was amazing in the game against Hearts, which we won, which really propelled us for the remaining games of the post-split. It was just brilliant, and the way that he could show other wingers, this is how you play. Even if you don't have pace, if you're clever enough with the ball, you can protect it. And wingers are the most prone people to losing possession, because they're the people who have to take risks to create openings. But a great player, 32 years old right now, and as I said, he's been selected for Scotland right now. Whether he plays many minutes for Scotland, who knows? But it's been another fairy tale to the season, another part of the intrigue which has made this season so memorable. what's your thoughts in your own words, mate?
Well, this is what I was saying at the start of the podcast. The fact that Rodgers has had to turn to people like Forrest, who we probably thought was going to be a bit part player this season. He had his testimonial at the start of the season, and usually that spells the end in terms of a prolonged career at a club. But again, that's a recruitment issue. But what Forrest and Rodgers have managed to do, and Rodgers as well, in this as a coach, you've seen how well they worked together the first time around. He re-energized them again because it looked like he was out the door. And as you said about Postecoglou, he was in and out, and he wasn't really getting much game time. But what Rodgers has managed to do for a second time is bring him back to life again, bring him back to a player who can make an impact on the pitch, regardless if it's for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And I like the fact that you said he takes care of the ball. What does Rodgers always speak about? He likes players who can take care of the ball, take care of possession, and keep it ticking over and keep the opposition chasing. And I thought in the Derby game recently, he absolutely tore Barisic a new one. He was going inside, outside. It was like watching James Forrest of old. And it's the experienced players throughout that dressing room, like Joe Hart, likes of Carter Vickers, James Forrest, Cal McGregor, Kyogo now as well, Greg Taylor. They've all been through the course, and you needed them players to stand up and be counted. And for the impact that James he's done, he's been rewarded with a call up to the Scotland squad, which I don't think any avid or any full-on Scotland supporter foreseen that happening at the start of the season. But his form in the last 6 to 7 weeks has been fantastic, and he can't be ignored. And I think he offers them a different option in terms of wing play and stuff of that nature, and pace and power, like Ben Doak as well. But yeah, I'm happy for James Forrest. I always am. He's been a one club man, and I think Joe Hart spoke very fondly of him as well. He looks at these guys in the dressing room. He's been there for years. That Cal McGregor, Ralston, Welsh, and James Forrest in that mix as well. And he's a brilliant player. And Rodgers said, and we all took the comment and we laughed about it a wee bit, but he's the best winger at the club. And I think you can see that. So, I mean, the way he comes on, the way he impacts a game, he gets in positions where he's scoring goals. And it is really, really like watching James Forrest of Oldham. Strange enough, the Dr. Rodgers' man management of Forrest this season has been phenomenal. He took a broken player, built him up with no pressure in the background, and played him at the perfect time. That sums it up fantastically well for myself, and that's basically what I was trying to say. But fantastic player. Yeah, Jamesy, he's incredible.
Yeah, really well put. Well, guys, I guess we're going to wrap it up for this evening. I've really enjoyed today. I think that we've kind of summed up the season, hopefully quite well. I hope that you guys would agree. The way that the season started off, with a bit of apprehension and how we kind of lost our way, but we managed to regain it. And there was a real feel-good factor in the way that we finished the season with the post-split. We managed to string a lot of victories together, and we really sprinted past Rangers. And we've not even spoken about the fun parts about Clementine, and all that.
That will come. That will come, because we're going to be doing an end of season review anyway, so that will come after the cup final and that.
Exactly. Like, again, there was just so many subplots and stories to this season, which I guess makes it really memorable. And I think we'll look back on it with a lot of fondness. But again, thank you very much, Ross and Stephen, for all your comments and contributions for tonight. Is there any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Never do the quiz with you again. That's my final thought.
Yeah, fair play. Okay, I'll take that on board. To the people
I
in
like Gavin's quizzes.
Thank you, mate.
Because you win and he tailors them to you. It's disgraceful.
Tailors them to me, aye. Nothing's tailored to me, let me tell you.
To the people in the comments, thank you so much for staying with us right now. We're at 144 strong right now. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. Thank you so much. We will be back on Friday for another podcast, and then of course it's the weekend to look forward to. So hope everybody has a great end to the week, and we'll be back on Friday. So hail, see you later.